flexing your finances to offset the cost of living crisis. My name is Peter Gillen and I'm chair of the Young Professionals Committee, and we're delighted to host you this evening. As many of you will know, our Young Professionals group organise various events throughout the year, including normal CPD, social events, as well as interprofessional get-togethers as well. And our members include newly qualified chartered accountants, as well as our, I suppose, not so recently qualified. So our demographic technically is from straight out of college right to those up to the age of 40. So please, there is almost a thought out there, a belief that, oh, young professionals, oh, that's only for people who are recently qualified. It absolutely is not. So please, if you know colleagues and friends and family who are perhaps interested in dialing into our events, attending our in-person events, please do send them along, because with the more the merrier, please. For this evening's event, we're delighted to be joined by money mindset coach Kel Galavan from Miss Smart Money. Kel transforms how professionals look, act, think about and handle their money. So after stepping away from her 16-year career to focus on her kids and family, she was suddenly facing the challenge of making half the household income stretch as hard as possible. So this challenge resulted in a no-spend year in 2019, where she reduced her family outgoings by €27,000, which is truly remarkable. I wish I could achieve a fraction of that, to be honest. And says she had the best year of her life. So amongst the topics, no doubt Kel will get into them in a bit more detail shortly, so I won't steal her thunder. But in the meantime, please be sure to interact with us during the event using the Q&A chat functionality. Please be thinking of questions as you go. Those things there, like, oh, I really wish I could ask someone about that. Now is the opportunity. So please seize it with both hands. Our theme for our events this year is all centered around collaboration. And as a result, we have been collaborating with various different parts of the Institute for our events this year. So I'm delighted to say that we're collaborating with the Cork Society for this evening's event. So before we begin the event in earnest, I'll pass you over to Andy Quirk, who is the chair of the Cork Society's Young Professional Subcommittee. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone for joining. So I won't talk for long. I know you're all here to listen to Kel tell us how to save some money. But just a quick reminder of some events we've got coming up from the Cork side. So we have 2 webinars coming up in the next 2 weeks. One of them around legal consideration and financial planning, which ties quite well into the theme of today. So that'll be led next Wednesday. And the following Wednesday, we have one on health insurance and the kind of things you can look at and packages available to you. We've also got our Daffodil Day breakfast coming up in March, and the sales for that will open next week. And then we're also looking at doing a bit of a wine tasting event, so keep an eye on the email traffic, because I think that might be of interest to a good few people. But as I said, you're here to listen to Kel, so Kel, I might hand over to you to kick off the presentation.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me on. I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay, and we will get kicked off. Can everybody see my screen there? Perfect.
Yes, indeed.
And look, as we're going through this, guys, if you do have questions, put them in the chat box, and I'll answer as many as I can, as best I can, when we get to the end of it, if that's okay. So we're going to kick off today, because I know this is much more topical than what it was even a couple of years ago, with inflation rising, with all the stuff that's going on. It can be really overwhelming. And no matter where you are in your life, and no matter where you are with your money, whether you're in your 20s or in your 40s, each time we face different challenges as we move forward, and at each stage in life there are different challenges that we have to go through. So hopefully today there will be some kind of nuggets, ideas, maybe a little bit of a different way of thinking when it comes to your money that might just help you out. But the main thing is I want you leaving here feeling a bit more in control, a bit more confident, and a bit more back in the driver's seat, because there's a lot going on. It can get very overwhelming. So right, briefly, I suppose we'll kick off to give you an overview of how I'm going to run the next 40 minutes or so. I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to talk about the high level of how we're going to manage our money during inflation. We're going to give you a walk through a personal money audit, which is really, really useful. We're going to talk about the fat expenses. And a lot of you guys will be aware of what these are, but they've never been more important to keep tabs on now. We're going to talk about a no spend day, a huge favorite of mine. I'm going to bring it all together in a nice big bow, and hopefully then you'll walk away feeling that bit more in control, that bit more confident, a bit more, I got this. And that's what we're really looking for here. So I suppose briefly with me, and we won't dwell on this too long, I spent 16 years in corporate. I'm conscious Peter said this. I worked in pharma for 16 years. My background is science. I absolutely loved it, but I just found over the years, had kids, commuting, everything. And there was one particular week went past where I didn't see my kids awake. And I kind of went, I'm gone so early in the morning, and I was gone a lot of weekends. And I kind of went, on paper, this looks really good. Like, we had 2 nice incomes, we had 2 cars, we had a mortgage, 2 kids, 2 cats. Like, it was just this lovely setup on paper. But the reality was we were exhausted. Money was going out of our hands like water. We barely ever saw each other, my husband and I found out I wasn't actually even seeing my kids. It was my husband and the childminder that were seeing them awake and growing, and I wasn't. So that's why I walked away, the shorter version of my career. I walked away after just 16 years, no redundancy, nothing, just walked away. And I said, right, if I'm going to cut our income in half, I'm going to make that income work as hard as I possibly could. So in 2019, I did a no spend year. And that I blogged about it and things like that, garnered a bit of attention, ended up being in a book, available wherever books are sold. Then I retrained as a QFA, and I found a lot of people were asking for advice and things. So now I've become a coach, and I don't necessarily work with products. I'm more on the mindset side, and I work with people one-on-one, and I absolutely love it. And there's a formula that I bring people through. It's a program, and that's pretty much what I do now. So why am I qualified to be sitting in front of you guys here on a Thursday night when you're so tired after a week's work and we're in the depths of January and you're giving your time for this? First of all, yes, I am a money mindset coach, and I am a qualified financial advisor. I have walked the walk in the sense that I've done the no spend year. I've been in the last recession. We were in 6 figures of debt. We had job losses. We've gone through the whole roller coaster of having no money to getting back up to 0, and then right on where we're working towards financial independence. So anything I teach, I've done myself, and I've taught to other people, and I know works. And the big one, number 3, this is why I think I am the right person sitting here in front of you, is because I am financially secure. We've gone from massive debt, I said, back up to 0 to here. So anything I teach has been tried and tested. And look, there's been bits of radio and things like that and TV and stuff. Some of you guys may have seen me. Don't worry if you haven't. I'm just another person. That's why I think I'm qualified to teach on this. And I think that's important to give you a bit of context on where I'm coming from. So let's dive into this. Why is managing your income during inflation so important? It's really important. And the bottom line summary of this is that if you can manage your money well during inflation, you can manage it well at any time, at any state, at any age, at any income. If you can manage it now, the rest is easy. It's as simple as that. So when we look at inflation, and we can see just the December numbers came in. So December, the index, the Irish index said that in December, inflation was at 8.2%. Now, the harmonized index for consumer prices, which is the Eurozone version of our CPI, that's at 9.2. So it's running slightly ahead. And the US is coming down now. It's at 6 point something, I believe. But it's still quite high compared to what a lot of us are used to. And that's coming through in loads of different ways. It's coming through, and like this is the 15th straight month we've had an annual increase in the CPI of at least 5%. Now, that's been unheard of for quite some time back. There's things that are really jumping out of the socks, things that we can't avoid, like housing, water, electricity, fuel, like they're up over 25%. Food is up, food and alcohol up over 10%. Like these are big jumps. Like you can always cut out buying clothes, but you can't not eat. So these things, they have to be impacting on some level. Now, like interestingly, education has dropped, miscellaneous stuff has dropped, but the big things that you can't avoid have jumped significantly. And that can get kind of scary, particularly if your income isn't as high as what you would like and you have a lot of outgoings going out. So the value with this kind of inflation rising, the value of our income is being eroded. And I know we know this, but it's only when you sit down and look at where your money is going and how little you have at the end of the month compared to a year ago, do we really start to feel that pinch. And if you don't sit down and take control of your money now, it's not just the money that will go awry, it's your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health. There's a massive impact on not managing your money and feeling that overwhelm that can go on. And I just wanted to show you this as well, because when you turn on a radio or you turn on anything, actually go online, you're going to hear all these stories of inflation and this kind of thing. And when you look at it over 10 years, so this is from the Trading Economics, they're brilliant for looking at these kind of tracking things if anybody's ever interested. This is just Ireland in the last 10 years. And you can see, like, we had really half decent patches of deflation where prices were dropping. And in the last 18 months, it has just jumped out of its socks. And you'll hear it every time you look at the media, and you see it everywhere you're going around, and people are feeling this like low-grade anxiety consistently every time they plug into the outside world. But I want to show you this because this is important. This is the same graph, but over 40 years. And what's really interesting about this is, yes, you can see the spike that we're in now, and we're right up there at 8.2%. But if you look back to and if anybody is in their 40s, right, they will have some form of memory of this, that back in the late 70s, early 80s, we were hitting inflation rates of 23.8%. That was scary territory. Mortgage rates in Ireland during that time hit just over 18%. Can you imagine now if mortgage rates hit those kind of numbers with the way our market is at the moment? It was thankfully came back down again and gave us historically low rates. But there was a period of several years where we were at 23.8 inflation, and for a small period of that, 18% mortgage interest rates. So even though we have this high inflation rate now, it has been worse and we have gotten through it. And I just thought that was a really interesting one to show, because sometimes a lot of these things, they're in the optics. And while, yes, you have to acknowledge inflation, it's only when you look back and realize, no, hold on, this has happened before and we're still standing, and so many things have happened and we're still moving forward. And that's a really positive thing to just set your mind on. But when it comes, like, we know inflation is high and we know everything that's going on at the moment is it's just really, really salient. Like the Ukraine is still going on, but it's not unprecedented. Like, we have had the quietest period in our history, now not including the Cold War or Afghanistan, but for all out war, this is the quietest and most peaceful Europe has been since the Second World War. So before that, wars were breaking out literally every few minutes across the world. So we've had our longer history has been so littered with wars. It's only a recent history, and up to our living memory, so even our grandparents and stuff, a lot of them wouldn't have been around during the war because that's all past now. We've had this lovely peacetime, and it's hard to switch and even think about that. But when you look at our longer history, war is more normal than not. But we still got through all of those. Pandemics and epidemics, they're not new. We've been through COVID, and yes, it was an eye-opener and it changed things on such a fundamental level. But when you look back at the Spanish flu, and the Spanish flu happened just right there, right after the First World War, and it was estimated to have killed at least 50 million people worldwide in 1 year. Absolutely in 1 year, and that they are scary numbers. And then before that, the Black Death or bubonic plague, that devastated Europe. It killed between 30 and 50% of the population. And that was only in the space of about 4 years as well. So they had a massive impact on how those countries move forward. And even though COVID wreaked havoc, and it did a lot made a lot of changes happen, it was one of a history of epidemics and pandemics that we've had. And I'm showing these to you not to depress you, but more as a positive thing. We got through this, right? A lot of us we don't remember these, but as a race, we've gotten through it and we've stayed building. And then inflation, I went through the Irish inflation, but just even globally, it's regularly hit over 20%. We've regularly had like, it's actually 15%, 18% mortgage rates. We've had all these high numbers before, but they have come back under control, and we have moved forward from those. And I think that's a really important note to have, that this is not unprecedented. It's unfortunate. It's not nice. It can be stressful, but it has happened before and we've gotten through it and we're still standing and we're still moving forward, and we will do the same here. So the good news, guys, is not all doom and gloom. And I want to talk to you briefly about the locus of control. Now, the locus of control was actually devised by a guy with one of the coolest names in the world, and it's Julian B. Rotter. So I just keep thinking Harry Potter anytime I think about this guy. But he was an American psychologist, and he sat down and he was thinking, right, like how can some people handle stress more than others, or appear to handle stress more than others? And he thought of this thing called the locus of control. And at any given stage, you can have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. Now, when we have an external locus of control, what that does is it has us focusing on things outside us, those macro things, war, epidemic, inflation, housing, all these big things that generally we, on an individual basis, do not have control over. And they have to be solved at a much higher level. But when you're focusing your energy on something you don't have control, that's when overwhelm comes in. That's where stress dips into de-stress and not the ideal eustress. The eustress is good stress. It's stress where we're psyched up and we're happy and we're plowing through stuff and things are going great, but you know you have a deadline, but it's good. You are on the ball, you're in the zone. And then stress is like your middle fulcrum. And then distress, because we often associate stress and distress as the same thing, but they're actually different. So distress is where we can tip into when our locus of control is external. But if you can pivot your locus of control internally, that switches your mind to go, okay, I can't control this, I can't control housing, I can't control inflation, but I can control what I do with my money today. So what can I do? How can I make changes? What is within my remit? What is within my boundaries, no matter how small, that I can manage? And doing that in times like this is very, very powerful, not just for the bank balance, but for the headspace as well. And when you have good, clear headspace, you make good, clear decisions and you feel good about those decisions. And that's rewiring your brain to have a healthier relationship with stress and with money. So I want you, as we go forward through this, I want you thinking like that. How can I control my finances during this time when I have all these things going on? There's the things Kel said there with inflation and stuff, then I have this going on in my life and I have that, and then the stress, and I have a good boss and not so good boss. This is about finding your space, finding your locus of control, and doing what you can do within that space to move you forward. And you will surprise yourself on what you are capable of doing. So to start off this locus of control, and even if you feel you can't fully grasp it yet, and these things take time, money is a skill, you learn it as you go along. So a money audit, I think, is a really lovely way of starting to get a handle on your money. And I say that because not everybody likes budgeting. Not everybody likes sitting down with a pen and paper, writing out what's going in, writing out what's going out. This is a nice way to just start tidying things up where you're not putting everything in a super structured format. And what a money audit is, it is basically, and it's not that complicated, it's super simple. It is simply taking stock of where your money is going. And what that looks like is actually the best way I can kind of put it is Google Maps, right? We all know Google Maps, and I love that little logo. Google Maps will bring you anywhere in the world, absolutely anywhere in the whole wide world, walking, train, car, it will take you there and it'll tell you how long, how to get there, and what your optimal things are and all of that. But it will not bring you anywhere unless you know your starting point. And a money audit gives you your starting point. And from that, you'll find your direction, you'll find your distance, you'll find what your journey will look like, because you'll figure out your end goal, but you can't do it till you figure out your starting point. And there's no point in just walking off in a random direction unless you know where you're going. But you can't know where you're going until you know where you are. And that's what the money audit does. So with the money audit, it's one thing where it can't predict the future, but it does help to guide you. And there was a phrase, was Joe Biden said it, but I'm sure several other people said it as well. And it's, don't tell me where you spent your money, show me your bank statement and I'll tell you where you spent your money. So with a money audit, what you quite literally do is you print off your bank statement and you get yourself 3 highlighters. For the purpose of this, I'm going to use green, amber and red. Nice little traffic light system will keep it simple. I like things simple. And you sit down, you print off your bank statement. If this is a scary thing, grab yourself a cup of coffee, something stronger if you need to, but find a time when you have a bit of headspace, when you have time to sit down and do this, particularly if it's your first time doing this. And I want you to, first of all, get your green. Right, we're going to start off with green. And I want you to go through your bank statement and anything that was something going out like groceries or something that you know money was spent well, and it's usually your mortgage or your rent, or there are things that moved you forward, your savings, your extra payment off a credit card, your do you want a really good night out where you absolutely enjoyed it and you go, that was worth every cent I spent. They're your greens, okay? They're your really worthwhile, my life would be less without them, and you mark those off, and this is your really good starting point. Your second one then are your ambers, and your ambers, they're kind of things like if you've a electricity bill, you haven't changed electricity bill in the last 12 months and you're out of contract and you know you could be getting a better deal with it, or it's something where I could have shopped around a bit more for that. It's nearly green, but you know yourself you could have been better. And then your reds, you always know the reds, because the reds do one of 2 things. It's either, what the heck is that? I have no idea. Or it's, I forgot I was even spending that. I forgot I was even doing that. And you'll find them, they'll tend to be things, and I find most of my reds come out on a Friday night or Saturday night when I'm tired and you're just flicking through stuff and you'll press and you'll put in the basket and you'll send it off, those kind of things. So with the money audit, what you need to do is start reducing the reds and then tipping more things into green. So if there's 1 or 2 subscriptions on there that would say you had a 30-day free trial and you forgot to cancel it, even if this is only €2 or €3, you're gonna feel really good, and that money is better in your pocket than it is going to something you're not using. And you pick 1 or 2 things a week, and then you just try and make it better and better and better as you go along. Just a couple of things, keep it simple for yourselves. Because one thing we have been trained to do is look at the big grand gestures of life. And grand gestures are lovely, like a big bunch of flowers is always nice, but it's the little things every day that actually compound to make the difference. So doing this money audit is important because it helps you show where your money actually is. Because as good as our human minds are, we forget a lot of stuff and we'll tap on things and we won't even realize there's 20 € spent here, 50 € spent here until you sit down and look. And with this money audit, if you do no other type of budgeting, but take this out every month or so when you're starting, but then every 6 months or every quarter, every 6 months, even every year when you get really good at it, and just make sure that you have as few reds as possible and as much green as possible. And that's pretty much how you do a money audit. And it's without fail, anybody I know that has done it is going, yeah, there were reds there that I didn't know were reds, or subscriptions going out that they didn't know. And that, guys, that's money that can go towards things that are fun to do or more important to do. It is no good in another company's pocket if you're not getting value in return for it. And I would recommend you do this regularly until you're comfortable, and then you can space them out. So now the next thing when it comes to getting your kind of costs under control, that money audit is a really good catch-all. But then there's the day-to-day things. So the things that build up to become the direct debit, like your ESB bill or whatever it is. And it's getting those under control and knowing that you're getting the best value even for your electricity it's a really good exercise to do. And I know when we do this, if you're going to roll your eyes, you're going to go, well, my mom always told me this. Yes, right. Because your mom would have, or your dad would have always said, look, turn off the thing if you're not using it, turn off the light, only fill the kettle a bit. They were ahead of their time because electricity wasn't as expensive back then. doing these things now, like only boiling the amount of water you need in the kettle, that's genuine cash back in your pocket at the rate electricity is going now. Turning off the sockets, all those things. And these are really good as short-term wins, because particularly if you're starting out and you don't have a huge amount of savings yet and you haven't built a huge amount of assets yet, these little wins, they give you something to hold on to, say, I'm doing this, I'm taking back control of this. And those short wins, no matter what your means, these are doable and you can do them, and your parents were ahead of their time. The second level, because I do like to break it into levels because sometimes it can just seem like too much, that's changing suppliers every year. When an appliance needs upgrading, get the best energy rated one you can, get smart meters in, heating controls, things like that, things that are medium term. You wouldn't be doing them every day, but when the time comes up, it's worth spending the time and energy to do that bit of research to get the best value you can. And then your long-term things, heat pumps, solar PV, extra insulation, electric car, those kind of things. And on a slight side note, I've had an electric car for 4 years now. Amazing for saving money, even with electricity prices going up. I want to touch briefly on the fat expenses. Now, for those of you who don't know, fat expenses are your food, accommodation, and transport. These guys are the biggest line items in pretty much everybody's budget. So when you are spending your money, approximately half of your income is going on these three things alone. Now, these stats are CSO stats. They're from the Household Budget Survey. Now, the Household Budget Survey is done every 5 years. We were supposed to have one in 2020. COVID hit. We should have a new one by the end of this year. So forgive me, the most recent figures I have at the moment are 2015. So I think these have hopped even since. But if just under half of your outgoings are going on these three expenses, then it has never been more important to get these under control, because get the low-hanging fruit. Okay, you don't have to go into deprivation and frugality to get your money under control. Catch the low-hanging fruit. Like when you're doing your money audit, catch those reds. When you're working on your food, and we'll tip on food a bit more, bit better now in a second. But these three ones, if you can get these optimized as best possible, that's half your budget sorted. And there's other things as well. You can, it's all up on CSO, but I think it's great reading. But like things like food, okay? When you're going through food, and we'll fly through this part, we all have to eat. I mentioned it earlier on, but you can not buy clothes. You can do a no spender. You can, stop eating takeaways. You can stop all these things, but you can't not have your groceries. Your grocery bill is a set bill. It keeps you alive. And it is really important to eat well and nourish your body and make sure you have the energy to live your life. But when it comes to food, simple little things like making a list, sticking to the list, bringing the list with you actually is a good one as well. Meal planning, having meat-free days, frozen fruit and veg. If you're into smoothies and frozen veg, it's frozen so fast now. The nutritional value they've found is actually quite often better in frozen peas and broccoli and things, because it's frozen so quickly as opposed to buying it fresh and bringing it home and eating it a week later. So nutritionally, that can often be a really good avenue, and it's less expensive. But buy where possible, special offers. Now, when I say special offers, I'm going to give a caveat here. Coupons can be red herrings, particularly if you go in and you normally spend, let's pretend, €40, and you get a coupon saying spend €50 or whatever it is. But if it makes you spend more than what you normally do, then that can be a red herring, and it's not good value for money. Or if it makes you buy things you won't normally buy and you won't enjoy. And it's often with these coupons, they're processed foods. They're not necessarily the healthiest foods. So just be careful with coupons, unless you're this guy, because he just loves spending loads of money. And then with food, it is really important to focus on food waste. Because when you're buying your food, we all know we should eat salads. The word should be gotten rid of from the language altogether. But like we're told, oh, you should eat more salad, you should eat more fruit and veg. But if you don't enjoy a particular fruit and veg, don't buy it. I know that sounds very rudimentary, but I want you thinking and planning, because about 50% of these salads and things, like about 50% of heads of lettuce they end up being thrown out. And that's a head of lettuce that was grown in a field by a farmer. It was harvested, it was packaged, it was washed, it was transported, it was brought to the store. It could have been brought from a different country. It was put up on the shelf. You spent your time and energy to go in and buy it and put it in your basket and then pack it, pay for it, pack it up, put it in your fridge. And if that ends up in the bin, that whole cycle was for nothing. And you're out of pocket. And you've probably paid to have your composting bin taken away as well. So there's a whole cycle there of money and resources that if we have food waste and we're not working on our food waste a bit more, there's a lot more at stake in that respect. So globally, about 1/4 of food is wasted each year. And the average Irish household throws out about 150 kgs of food, and a huge amount of that is still edible food. And I saw that's a lot of money, a lot of weight. The money actually was even more scary. I think about €1,000 per year. And this is from the EPA, the Stop Food Waste website. So the EPA website, Stop Food Waste, about €1,000 a year per household is just been dumped in the bin. And that's €1,000 of your post-tax money. So about 2,000 of your gross salary is ending up in the bin. And that is a lot of money that you could do a lot of fun things with. Accommodation, a lot of you guys will be familiar with this side of things. So if you're switching your mortgage, really, look, this can be a headache. This can be a hassle and this can take time, but trying to get the best rate you can for your mortgage, putting in the extra little bit of legwork, like the difference between a 3% interest rate and a 4.5% interest rate over 25 years for and not a huge mortgage is nearly €57,000 of your after-tax money. So double that for your gross tax. And the other side of it is like, think about what could you do if somebody handed you €57,000? You'd feel like you won the lottery. And this is where really thinking and taking time with your mortgage interest rates, you can get a kid or two through college with that kind of money. You can travel the world for a couple of years and just see everything you ever wanted to see with that kind of money. And that's where I want you thinking as well, because you might kind of just lock in and go for the higher rate just to save yourself the hassle, but there's a premium attached to that. So get the best rate that you can when it comes to switching up your mortgage and that sort of thing. And then transport. I tend to look at things like transport and energy in a similar kind of fashion. So when I say that, what I'm talking about here is there are short-term things that you can do. And it might seem a bit silly, but these things are actually worth money back in your pocket. And it's things when you're driving the car. And anybody who's done a defensive driving course will have heard about some of these kind of ones. But like if you're going above 50 kilometers an hour, close the windows. And if it's a hot day and you're doing below 50 kilometers an hour, turn off your AC, open your windows. Reduce the weight in your car. So you have stuff in the boot and things. If you don't need it in there, get rid of it. Avoid idling, accelerating too harshly, braking too harshly. And then if you can, take public transport, work from home, walk. There's simple things, and I know you know them, but there's a difference between knowing something and taking action on something. And I want you thinking in the taking action space. Then there's your medium term things you can do. So yeah, keep your car well maintained. I know it's an expense, but having, and particularly if it's a combustion engine car, there's so many moving parts in that. If you keep it well maintained, things will stay working for longer. And yes, it will always be an expense, but hopefully the idea is that it's the opportunity cost has dropped there because you've taken care of things as they go along, and pay your tax annually. Shop around for car insurance, that sort of thing. And then the long-term ones, and a lot of us end up taking out loans for cars when, if we started, as soon as we got the new car, and if we started saving for the next one, you can often have a decent enough chunk for a trade-in and then your cash, so you don't have to go down the loan route at all. That would be the ideal, to have that money there and then, because then you're not tied into an agreement, you're not paying interest or fees or anything on the loan. It's yours clear and free, and there's quite an empowering thing to know that you did that. You did that off your own back by saving up money. And then hands up, yes, I am sold on electric cars. I find cost saving everything. I find it brilliant. Household budget survey. This is survey I showed you earlier, but in a slightly different viewpoint. And what I want to show you here is we have talked about, there's four kind of high pieces here: food, housing, transport. We've spoken about those. That's half your income right there. But has anybody noticed at the very end, there's a really tall one that we haven't addressed yet? So it's miscellaneous goods, services, and expenditure. And I love this one because what's in here is not food, it's not alcohol or tobacco, it's not clothing and footwear, it's not fuel and light, it's not housing, it's not your whiteware, it's not your transport, it's everything else. And there's a chance you're kind of going, well, what else is there? And this is the beauty of it. 33% of our income across all age groups, across all counties and all demographics in Ireland spend about 33% of their income on stuff. And when I say stuff, it can be anything from streaming services to gadgets to eating out, just those taps, all those little taps over time. That's where 33% of our income goes to. And when I was saying earlier about looking for the low-hanging fruit, don't want deprivation, don't want frugality, go for the low-hanging fruit. And this is what we're going to talk about between now and the end, because I think this is a really nice one. You don't need to cut it down to zero, but even if you got 5, 10, 15% of this back in your pocket, think about how much that is worth. Think of your own salary and you had an extra 5, 10, 15% on top of that. Wouldn't that be nice? That's what we're looking for now. And how I tend to tackle this is using a no spend day. Now, a no spend day is any day where you do not spend money other than on groceries and essential bills, because you have to pay your direct debits. You have to keep the electricity on, the broadband, your phone. To me, they're all essential to live a normal life in this country. And you have to eat well and you have to nourish your body, right? So if you have those bills going out, you're in no spend and nothing else, that's no spend day territory. So like that, any of those bills. And I would be quite generous with this, because if it's something that makes a genuine difference to your life, that's in no spend day category, these essential things. But if it tips over into a spend day, that means that money's been spent on other things. And it could be going to the cinema, it could be heading out with your friends, it could be coffee, it could be clothes, it could be takeaway, it could be any of these things. But quite often, a big telltale for what something, if it's something is no spend or not, is that you've either forgotten you've spent it, or it's something that's going to end up in landfill in a few months' time. They're your kind of really big giveaways on some of the tips into a spend day, because they tend to be the things that don't matter so much. And I say tend because spend days in themselves are okay, right? We're not against spending money here. We're about getting value for money, and that's really important. So spend days are okay because spending is a part of living. Like, it's so great to go see a movie, go meet your friends, get a nice piece of clothing, have that lovely top, whatever it is, go on that trip. Like, they're really important, but it's about thinking, separating out the really important ones, the ones where you go, I loved actually spending that money, getting the coffee and the bun with my friend in the coffee shop. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That made my day. That's very different to, I was tired and I just wasn't bothered making my coffee before I left the house, and I wasn't bothered making my lunch, and I just got them. I didn't even like them. There's two very different spend days. One was really good value for your money, and one was not. And it's the not one that we're looking to curb here. Because when you have that 33%, that's fine spending your money, absolutely, once you're saving and you're meeting all your commitments and everything like that, and you're having fun with your money. But if you find that you're running short at the end of the month, or if you find that you're not saving, or you find that you're not putting money into your pension, and you're finding you're putting yourself under pressure, that's when this spend day versus no spend day comes into a league of its own, because it finds all that money. It curbs that kind of mindless spending where we're on autopilot. We're not really thinking through our taps. If you focus on having a no spend day, that curbs all that, and you'll suddenly find there's way more money in your account than what you're used to having. It's a very strange feeling at first, but it makes a huge difference. And this was one of the big things to save a massive chunk of that €27,000 that I did in the no spend year. And I do these regularly, and they allow me, they've just been massively game changing. So really, with a no spend day, what you're looking for is 2 to 3 no spend days a week. This is not like to do it as a lifestyle. You're not looking at 7 days no spend and just hiding under blankets. You are thinking through, okay, well, I'm going to bring my lunch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm going to meet my friend for lunch on Thursday. And you know what, I'm heading out on Saturday and I know I'll be spending money on Sunday. And just think through where your money is going in an adulting kind of way, so that you know when you are spending it, it's worth it to you. You're going to make a memory. You're going to have fun. It's going to light you up, as opposed to looking at your bank statement and going, I don't even know what that is. There's your difference. Bonus tip, guys, we're coming towards the end of this. Prioritize your pension. And I know you guys know this, right? I know, but it is worth saying. It's worth saying a million times over. Max it out as best you can, okay? This is tax-free money going in. If your employer is giving you money, that's extra money on top of your salary. Don't leave it on the table, okay? Do not leave free money on the table. When you leave your parents' house and you get your independence, nobody gives you free stuff anymore. This is one of the few times where you have free anything. And I think just bank that, get as much in there as possible. And I think this is a nice one to show starting early. And it does show 11% annual return, but over a very long period of time, that is possible. And I think it's, yeah, so if you invested 5,000, it's in dollars, yes, 5,000 a year over 10 years and stopped. The guy who did it at 25 and stopped at 35, never putting any more in, versus the guy who did it 55 to 65 without putting any more money in, the difference is $787,000 versus $83,000. I know which pension pot I prefer to have. And the other side of this is just an Irish-based one, and it's the importance of starting early. And you can see the earlier you start putting money in consistently, the more you're going to have on the other side. So even if you're only able to put a small amount in first, put in as much as you can, with the view to maxing it out early when you can. When I say maxing out, reaching your thresholds like 15%, 20%, whatever your age is, up to what you can. And if you have to stop it for a little while when you're older, you know you've banked that. And that's a really nice comfort, because when the pension came in, it came in 1908, and the average person lived about 4 years after retirement when that came in. Now we're living 16, 18, 20 plus years longer. And even our current pension is paid out of general coffers. And by the time a lot of us get to that retirement age, we don't know what the state pension will look like. And it is very nice to know that you have money put aside for yourself now, because you don't know if you're going to be able to work or want to work when you hit 65, 70 or 80 years of age. But you do know you want to be warm and well fed and maybe travel a bit. So feathering that nest a bit early now, if you can, is going to be hugely beneficial going forward. So managing your money during inflation, if you can do it now and get under control now, and get that locus of control back and just solidly in place now, you can manage your money at any stage, because the process is rinse and repeat for the rest of your life. Key areas to focus on. If you haven't done a money audit, please do, even just for the crack, right? Just to see what happens and see how many reds and things you have. I do urge you, it is an eye-opener for everybody, even me when I do it. I don't do it as often now as what I used to, but I still catch myself going, I'm not sure about that one. And so there'll always be things that we can be better on. And then think about how to control your costs on several levels. So no matter what your means are, even if you're starting out with your money life and you don't have a huge amount of savings and things, and you don't have money to invest in electric car or any of that kind of stuff, do what is within your control to do, the small things. Then you step up to the medium things, like the annual things, like, you know, shopping around for insurance, whatever it is. There will come a time when you make the savings on the short-term level and the savings on the medium-term level, that will give you the money for the long-term level. And have confidence that that will happen. It just needs time to happen. And then understand the power of getting your fat expenses under control. Optimize them as best possible. Some of them are slower burns, but they are wins, because that is half your income right there. And a small percentage win on half your income is way more than cutting out something small. Harness the power of no spend. it is a game changer for your money, because it's not just about reducing kind of the mindless spending. I'm not fond of that phrase, to be honest, but it helps you look for value. It helps you look for more for your money, because you've worked hard to earn it and get it into your bank, and you deserve to get good value for your money. And then build up your pension, future-proof, always future-proof. So we're coming to an end now, guys. I hope you're all still awake. I hope you got something from that. I'll open the floor to questions, or if there's anything that anybody has to say, I'm right here.
Amazing. First of all, thanks so much, Kel. I particularly loved your points about focusing on the locus of control, and I suppose focusing on the controllables, because it's so easy to turn on the news these days and I guess get overwhelmed by everything that's happening at the moment. And also the no spend days, I really must get on that myself. So thank you very much. Again, I might remind everyone who's dialed in to please submit any questions you have for Kel. We already have a few. Please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A functionality. Might crack right into it, Kel. I'm very conscious of your time and everyone else's time. But the first question actually relates to, you spoke a bit about inflation earlier on. Our first question is, tracker rates have increased significantly since July of last year and are expected to increase further this year. Is it still prudent to stay on tracker rate, or should a move to fixed rate be considered?
That's a really good question. I'm going to sound like I'm not giving a straight answer, but there's two ways of looking at this, okay? And people will have different opinions on it. The tracker rates, we were all jealous of being a tracker rate. Like anybody had one, you're really like this level of smugness of, I actually won for this one time in my life, I actually won. And they were brilliant, right? Anybody who had one, absolutely, and as you rightly should have, held on to it for dear life. So for the last decade or so, if you had a tracker, you were winning. Hands down, you were winning. And now with inflation, because obviously it's linked to inflation and it's 1% above the ECB rate and all of that, the dynamic is changing ever so slightly. So you need to think about, well, what's the future going to bring? Because if inflation comes under control in the near future, and nobody knows if it will, right? But if it does, and inflation comes down, then the ECB will follow accordingly and bring their interest rates back down. And then you're back. If you still have your tracker, the idea is you're back to winning again. However, we don't know how long inflation will last, and we don't know what heights the ECB will go to. So you have to kind of sit down and go, well, do you want to ride this out for a little bit longer with the hope that it'll come back down? Or do you want the security of, we'll say, fixing into a 10-year fixed rate and get it for 3% or 3 point whatever percent? And that's a conversation you need to have with yourself, with your partner, with whoever, and sit down and go, well, what do you think? And maybe with a mortgage broker, whoever you need to talk to. But they're the kind of two sides. So I won't say absolutely, no, get out of the tracker, and I won't say go into a fixed rate. It has to be your decision, but just think what the tracker is and how it works. So if it's going up now, it can come back down, and it will come back down when, but the big question mark is the when. And then the fixed rate, you might prefer, depending on what's going on in your life, you might prefer to have the security of that for a certain length of time, because you have to work with where your comfort zone is as well. And comfort zone gets a bad name, but you have to be able to sleep at night, and you have to not have the anxiety of every day thinking, is my tracker going to go up? If that's overwhelming, potentially, having the security of knowing, right, well, for the next 5-10 years, this is what it is. And most of the rates now, when you look at some of the rates historically, they're still quite all right. It's just relatively, they seem very high. I hope that it helps you.
No, that was a fantastic answer. Thanks very much, Kel. The next one we have in actually is related to pensions, which you spoke about towards the end. And it says, Kel mentions maximizing, spoke about maximizing one's pension. Where should I invest for retirement if I possibly want the options to move abroad in the future? So I don't want to link to a regulatory pension that is locked in due to pension rules. Now, I'm not sure that's too specific.
I'll be really honest, I wouldn't know exactly. I really wouldn't.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, I would love to give you a better answer, but I'd say talk to talk to a pension broker. They'll know a lot more than I will. It wouldn't be my specific area of expertise, and I could send you down the wrong direction just purely for, yeah. Yeah.
No, actually, no, that's it. No, thanks very much. I'm very conscious that a lot of our members are typically, the demographic is 25 to 40 years old. And I don't think none of us have to look very far in the media to know that it's increasingly, to be honest, almost impossible to get onto the property ladder in general. I suppose, do you have any general advice? I know you spoke a lot, and you gave so much good advice on, saving bits here and there, but do you have any general advice for people with that particular objective in mind?
Yeah. Oh, look, the property market has just done this like 360 in the last few years. And a lot of what's going on now is on the back of the last recession, when they just, and I'd say anybody who's looking to get a mortgage now, they probably just think why did we just took money left, right, and center. It was handed out to us, but we didn't know how to handle this money, and then people couldn't pay it back, and house price got all inflated. And as a result, all the rules and regulations came in, and now it's between stress tests and everything, it is getting much more difficult. But the good side to that is when you do get a mortgage, the quality of the mortgages that are given out now are much higher and better, because the banks are looking for the safest bet possible. That's what they're looking for. So anybody who, even if you're not thinking of getting a mortgage yet, it's no harm to make sure your finances are in order. And when I say that, make sure you have as few debts as possible. Get your credit record. You can get your credit record for free and look at it every year, because sometimes there's mistakes on it. Sometimes there are other things on it. So when banks are looking, they're going to be looking at that credit record. So you want to make sure it's good and tidy, and it can take a good stretch of time to get it tidied up. So I would definitely look at that, and I would get saving, but building out your fund. So like a rainy day fund is a handy little one to have, because it kind of helps you smooth out the cash flow during the year. So it's a savings fund, yes, but it's for really specific things. It's for the expected unexpected. So it's for when the car decides it wants a really big service and you just can't cash flow that, or the dishwasher decides, you know what, I'm going to just flood the kitchen on you today. Those kind of things. Yes. So have that in place, because what that will do is it'll help you to not dip into savings, so that you can show those longer saving rates. So when you have your proper big deposit savings or whatever, they can be left alone, and you can just keep putting the money in, and you have that rainy day fund there. I think it is, just have that good savings habit in early, not carrying debt, and keeping your credit record as clean as possible. And there's a phrase, if you're always prepared, you never have to get prepared. And I would think like that, because even if it's not a mortgage, there's going to be something down the line where you're going to need money. And having that stuff there, and then it's less of a lifestyle change when you do have to go into that mortgage mode.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, Kel. Just looking now through the other questions we received. One question we have in is, and it might be too specific possibly, but do you have any advice on the best savings accounts to use? So I suppose, like, should they go to their normal bank account or a credit union? I think it's fair to say the interest rates and savings accounts have probably been a little rubbish for the past while. So, and I appreciate you're not in a position necessarily to call out specific banks rating, but even how should people approach it? Are there good comparison websites you would recommend, or how would you go about it?
Yeah, look, okay, to be fair, like there's loads of different thought processes on this. The way I kind of look at it is there are different layers to your financial security cushion, and you start off with the stuff that's easy. So your rainy day fund, things that are quick, easy access. But with those, you're going to get pretty much zero interest. But what they do is they just make your day-to-day life and your month-to-month, year-to-year much easier. If you do have, and most of you guys will know this, but as the more risk you enter, the more risk you open your money to, the higher the return can be. But you don't want to risk money if you know you're going to need it in 5 to 7 years. Yes. So if you know you need to save, and you might hear, look, inflation is going to erode it, you just have to make the best choice you can. So like, there's always state savings, not the hugest return, but with state savings, the money you have in there, it's guaranteed, it's past that deposit guarantee scheme threshold. So whatever is in-state savings. And what can be handy actually, and I know a lot of people who've done well out of this, is prize bonds. So yes, so even though there's no interest on prize bonds, you buy them and you can set up your thing online. You don't have to go really to the post office anymore. And you can put some, if you have cash that you won't need for X amount of weeks, so they need to go in for 3 months, and after that you cash them in at any stage you want. And it happens quite quickly. It takes about a week or so to turn it around. But during that time, it's put into the prize bond draw every week, and you can win like $250,000 and all this kind of stuff. So you could, the odds are low, but you could come away with a reasonable amount of money. And I know regularly like 50, 500, 1,000 euros have been won. And that is a really good return on investment if you have a couple of thousand in there. So that might be an option as well.
And those prizes are tax-free, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Totally tax-free.
Which is quite nice.
Yeah, so if somebody is saving for a deposit, yes, look, you can have it in your credit union or wherever, but it's okay to have some of it in something like prize bonds because it's guaranteed by the state. You have a chance of that slightly higher return, but you know that it's safe in as much as any money can be safe.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thanks so much. There's so much, so much good advice. It's almost knowing what advice to focus on first, because there's so much. But no, it's fantastic. One person wrote in there saying just I suppose they're beginning their saving journey, you could say, and they're wondering where to start. So you mentioned the money audit earlier. Would you say that's the best first place to begin, or would you recommend any other steps?
I think it's an easy way to begin, because it's until you sit down and really look at your money, you can't really know where it's going, because we think, well, I'm not that bad, and and you might think, well, I'm not earning enough, that's my problem. Well, if that's your problem, let's rule it out, let's triage it through. And doing a money audit is a really good way, because that 33% that I touched on from the household budget survey, like, that nobody thinks that they spend a third of their income on stuff, because we all feel the electricity bill, and we feel the petrol going into the car, and we feel the rent going out, and it's like this tug, and it's awful. But the tap for €50 for the jumper on sale, we don't feel that to the same level. So the money audit is really handy for that, because it makes you kind of go, okay, there actually was a couple of €100 there that I didn't even remember spending until I looked at it. And that's just a nice way. Another way of doing it is pay yourself first. So somebody who's really not liking budgeting. So you have your income, and you figure out your expenses. So your expenses will be your direct debits going out, your approximate amount of what you're going to spend on food, things like that. So, but there's another line item that'll go in here. So your beginning of the month will say your money comes in, and that's what you have, and you know all your bills. But before any of those bills go out, you put your savings away. So you treat your savings like a bill. So you pay yourself first, because if you think about it, if your broadband doubles in price, you're still going to pay the direct debit until you get a better price on it. If your electricity bill goes up, you're still going to pay the direct debit. So if you put your savings like a bill and have it as your very first bill, even if it's only a small amount when you're starting, because I don't want you dipping into it halfway through the month, it could be 20 quid, right? Just something, and have that as your bill and build it up over time. Of now live, and that's a nice way of doing it as well.
That's perfect. Thanks so much. I feel like we could listen to you all evening, to be honest. We all have so much to learn, I feel, in this space. But thanks so much. I'm conscious of everyone's time and your time this evening, so my wrap up there, if that's okay. But firstly, I'd just like to thank you, Kel, so much for taking the time to speak to all of us this evening. I think everyone has got a few very tangible pieces of advice and how they can look to manage their money a bit smarter going forward. So thank you so much. I would encourage everyone to check out your website, misssmartmoney.com. It's mrssmartmoney.com. I also like to thank Andy and the Cork Society for supporting this evening's event, as well as our own Young Professionals Committee for all the work they do in the background, whether it be finding speakers for our events or for helping out with social media online. Really do appreciate everyone's input and support. Be sure to follow both Cork Society and our Young Professionals group on social media to keep keep abreast of our upcoming events. For example, we have one coming up in March, as well as all the ones that Andy mentioned at the start. So please keep an eye on those. Also, thank you to the Chartered Accountants Ireland for all their ongoing support, and in particular to Linda McGee and Karen Lanigan for their almost daily support at this stage. So really do appreciate it. And last but not least, thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed yourselves and have a fantastic evening. So thanks again, everyone, and take it easy.